Hello, my dear friends, and welcome. Tonight, I want to tell you a story, a special story to carry you into your dreams. So, find a cozy spot, close your eyes, and let your imagination wander to a small, quiet town nestled between rolling hills. In this town lived a teacher named Ahmed. He wasn't rich or famous. In fact, he was quite poor, but he carried himself with a quiet dignity that shone brighter than any gold. Every morning, as the sun painted the sky with soft shades of pink and orange, Ahmed would walk to the old schoolhouse. It was a sad-looking place with cracked walls that told stories of forgotten years, and benches so broken they wobbled with the slightest touch. The chalk he used was often just tiny, worn-down nubs, but in his hands they held the power to create worlds. Ahmed's salary was barely enough to buy bread, but his dreams were rich and vast. He dreamt of a future where every child in his town could read, write, and think for themselves. He believed that education was the key that could unlock a brighter tomorrow for them all. But the parents in the town didn't share his vision. They would often gather and whisper, sometimes laughing outright. Education. What good is that? One would say, our children need to work in the fields, not waste time with books. Many didn't even bother sending their children to school, seeing it as a useless distraction from a life of hard labor. There were nights when Ahmed would sit alone, the weight of their words heavy on his shoulders. He felt tired, so tired, and a shadow of hopelessness would try to creep into his heart. But then he would look at the stars twinkling outside his small window and remember his promise. He would light his old lantern, its dim, flickering flame dancing on the walls, and begin preparing his lessons for the next day. The soft scratch of his pen on paper was a quiet song of defiance against the darkness. One day, a wave of excitement swept through the town. The government had sent a large sum of money to build a brand new school. For a moment, Ahmed's heart soared with joy. Finally, his dream was coming true, but his hope was short. The corrupt leaders of the town, men with greedy eyes and empty hearts, planned to steal the money for themselves. When Ahmed heard their whispers and saw their sly smiles, he knew he had to speak up. He went to them, his voice trembling but firm, and protested. "This money is for the children," he pleaded. They just laughed. A cold, heartless laugh that echoed through the town square. "Look at the poor teacher," they sneered, thinking he can change the world. Defeated but not broken, Ahmed walked away from their mockery. He knew he couldn't fight their power, but he also knew he could not give up on the children. That evening, a new idea sparked within him, as bright and warm as his lantern's flame. If the children couldn't go to a school, the school would come to them. He cleared out his tiny one-room house, pushing his bed against the wall to make space. He had no salary to offer himself, no fancy blackboards, no colorful books. All he had was his unwavering hope and his own honest heart. He went door to door, inviting the poorest children, the ones whose parents couldn't even afford to dream. At first, only a few came, their eyes wide with curiosity. They sat on the floor of his small home, and with a piece of charcoal on a smooth stone, Ahmed began to teach. He taught them the shape of the letter A, the magic of the number 1, and the rhythm of simple poems that made them giggle. He poured all his love and patience into every lesson. He didn't ask for a single coin. His only payment was the glimmer of understanding in a child's eye. Months slowly turned into a season, and then another. The small group of children in Ahmed's house grew. The sound of their laughter and their eager voices reciting the alphabet filled the little room. They were learning slowly, beautifully. The seeds of knowledge that Ahmed had planted were beginning to sprout. They learned to write their names, to count the stars, and to read stories that took them on grand adventures, far beyond their little town. One afternoon, a stranger arrived in town. He was a government officer sent to check on the progress of the new school project. When he found nothing but an empty plot of land and heard the leader's flimsy excuses, his face grew grim. Disappointed, he was about to leave when a faint sound caught his ear, the sound of children singing a nursery rhyme. He followed the sound to Ahmed's humble home. Peeking through the open door, he stood mesmerized. He saw Ahmed, his face glowing with passion, surrounded by a circle of children, their faces alight with concentration and joy. There were no benches, no uniforms, no fancy equipment. There was only a teacher and his students, sharing the pure, unadulterated gift of learning. The officer was deeply moved. He walked in, and the room fell silent. He looked at Ahmed, his eyes filled with respect, and said, his voice full of emotion, "You, sir, are a lamp giving light in the deepest darkness." The officer reported everything he had seen. News of Ahmed's incredible dedication traveled fast. Soon, help began to pour in. The stolen funds were recovered, and the corrupt leaders were held accountable. A beautiful new school was built, not of cold bricks and mortar, but on the foundation of Ahmed's sacrifice. It was filled with books, benches, and all the resources he had ever dreamed of. Ahmed was appointed as the head teacher. His students, now learning in a proper school, blossomed. They excelled in their studies and became known throughout the region for their intelligence and kindness. The very same parents who had once mocked Ahmed now lined up outside the school, hoping to get a place for their children, their faces filled with respect and a little bit of shame. They finally understood that the greatest inheritance they could give their children was not land or money, but the light of knowledge. And so, our story comes to a gentle close. One evening, after a long, fulfilling day at the new school, Ahmed sat in his small house, just as he had done so many times before. He lit his old faithful lantern. Its warm light filled the room, just as his hope had filled the hearts of so many children. He looked out at the moonlit town, now filled with promise and a future bright with learning, and he whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. He realized a profound truth that night, that a true and honest sacrifice never goes unrewarded. The light of knowledge once lit can never be extinguished. One true teacher can indeed change the destiny of generations, and patience and goodness always, always find their blessings. Thank you for listening. I hope this story brought you a sense of peace and inspiration. Sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with light. If you enjoyed our story tonight, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more peaceful tales. Good night.